Welcome to the Shell Contributory Pension Fund discussion panel. I'm Tim Morrison, Chair of the Trustee Board, and I'm joined today by Mary Corrie. Welcome, Mary.
Thank you.
Mary is a member-nominated director and has been on the board since 2014, and also by Haydn Jones, who is Head of Administration in the Trustee Services Unit. We have a number of questions that were asked by members in response to our request in this year's Source magazine. I'm going to start with the first question for Haydn. How closely linked is the SCPF to the SOCPF?
Thanks, Tim. Well, the short answer is that they are very closely linked, but they are completely separate entities. The SCPF is for UK-based employees working in the UK and is regulated within the UK. The SOCPF is for UK employees working overseas and is regulated from Bermuda. Both funds are run administratively from the UK and the Trustee Services Unit, but both funds have separate trustee boards and their assets are completely separate from each other. On the website, the Shell Pension website, there is a fact sheet, I think it's called the Interfund Linking fact sheet, that details how the two funds interact, and you can find all the information about the schemes there.
So the basic position, though, for members is that whatever your service, whether it's overseas or in the UK, your pension will be based on total service and final salary.
Absolutely, absolutely. It's something that we do cover off when members come to retirement.
Mary, a couple of the questions concern the strength of our sponsoring employer Shell. As one questioner put it, how independent is the SCPF from Shell? And another one asked, hypothetically we hope, what would happen if Shell UK was not there anymore?
Well, it's important to understand that we are a trust, and our trust is run by trustees, and it's the trustees who hold all the assets. And we hold those separately and independently from the employer, from our sponsor, although of course the employer is there to top up the fund if at any point it should be required. I mean, the fund is required by law to ensure that it pays all pensions on time and in full. And therefore...
And is funded for that.
And it's funded for that. And therefore, although that's funded out of the SCPF, should it be required, then the sponsor is there, the employer is there to top that up.
And just to add in, the trustee company has a board of directors, half of whom are nominated by the sponsoring company and half of whom are nominated and elected by the scheme members. And obviously the trustee's job is to ensure the scheme is well run and well funded.
And in answer to the second question about what would happen if Shell UK was no longer there, it is very reassuring to know that it's not just Shell UK who is the sponsor for our fund, but in fact the Shell Group. And therefore we are not dependent on the outcomes or the activities of Shell UK alone.
This is indeed reassuring. Let me move on to the next question now. We had a question on the strength of the fund given the reduced number of active members still contributing, particularly as the fund is now closed to new members. Haydn, would you like to say something about that?
Yeah, the scheme is considered to be a mature fund. We have more pension and deferred members than active members. There are assets in the scheme which are sufficient to pay existing pension promises. Also, we are not reliant on member contributions to make good those pension promises.
The next question is, how is the fund positioned if the employer struggles in the transition to a lower carbon world? This question goes to the heart of the trustee board's role. One of our main tasks is to assess how financially strong the employer is, so that if needed, the employer is in a position to provide further funds to the scheme. And this is something we monitor regularly. We take account of a lot of external data, there's much material available, but we also meet with senior Shell executives, and we have an annual meeting with the Shell UK country chair to assess how Shell's strategy is playing out and how progress is being made.
And of course, Tim, because the SCPF is currently so well funded and the RDS group is currently so financially robust, our own time horizon is much more the medium term. and understanding the sponsor strength in the medium term. And when I say medium term, 10 to 15 years.
So that's an important point. And one of the measures we use is, of course, Royal Dutch Shell's credit rating, which is AA-, which is very strong. This tells us that the company is in a very strong position over that period of time to be able to meet any commitments it has. Another question, Mary, presumably from an active member. Given the surplus at the last valuation, why does Shell not reduce the employee contribution rate?
Well, technically, Tim, this would be a question for the employer, for Shell, rather than for us. However, we know the answer, don't we? The SEPF was originally set up as a contributory pension fund, and that's one of the core founding principles of the fund. Also, of course, it is the surplus that we generate that then allows us to move towards, over the medium term, to de-risking strategies, which therefore, of course, are for the benefit for all.
And perhaps a linked question to that, we were asked by a member, what is the SCPF strategy on moving its investments out of fossil fuel companies and into renewable energy and other green businesses? So I'll answer that question. Perhaps the starting point is to note that of our £17 billion of assets, less than 1% is actually invested in the shares of fossil fuel companies. So it's quite a small proportion. Last year, we also decided to use an index for our investment in listed companies, which includes environmental, social and governance factors and includes a reduction in the carbon footprint of our equity portfolio of around 10%. And at the moment, we are starting off with applying that to about 40% of the portfolio as we get experience with using it.
But Tim, how does this really affect us?
Well, perhaps the main impact is going to be as a result of our de-risking programme as we move from higher risk assets to lower risk assets like index-linked gilts over the next 15 years or so. This has the great benefit of reducing our reliance on the employer covenant. The other point to note is that a lot of the impact from society's response to climate change and the need to get to net zero carbon is going to come in the impact on the global economy, on interest rates, inflation rates, and indeed longevity. And Mary, finally on the investment side, one member asked about our policy on holding precious metals as a possible defensive position in the event of another severe financial crisis.
Okay, well, our investment strategy does not include investing in commodities. That stability that you were talking about just now over the medium term means our policy is much more about investing in index-linked gilts and more stable areas so that we can de-risk safely over time. And of course, we always have the backup of the sponsor if ever we needed to reinvest in the fund at any time. We don't need precious metals.
So the diversification provides a defence against a range of outcomes.
With a much lower volatility, which I think is key to the principles of our investment strategy.
And now, moving on to really quite a different sort of a question. Haydn, member asks, what steps can they take to ensure they don't become a victim of a scam?
So we hear quite a few questions about this from members at the moment. The first thing is, if you're in receipt of a pension, you're not at risk of a scam relating to a transfer. But you should obviously, all members should be generally aware of financial scams. And there's pretty good information out there. The Citizens Advice website has got quite a lot of information on there. If a member hasn't yet started taking their Shell pension and they are considering a transfer, we also obviously recommend they take independent financial advice. But a member should be extremely wary if they've received an unexpected phone call. We're quite lucky in the UK that cold calling has been banned for UK financial advisors, but we are aware that some members have been contacted by overseas financial advisors trying to encourage them to transfer into maybe an unsuitable pension arrangement. And we are aware that some members have also been contacted by financial advisors, typically overseas, saying they're working with Shell or with the trustee to help them facilitate a transfer. And we don't share member data with any third party unless we've got the members' express permission to do so.
I always think that one of the best bits of advice to people about scams is just don't do anything in a hurry as well. Take your time.
Absolutely.
Haydn, another question a member has asked is, where can they find more information about their SCPF pension?
So we send, for all active and deferred members, we send an annual benefit statement. It sort of details what pension they've built up and also gives an estimation of what their pension could be at retirement. Those members who have AVCs, their annual statement is available on the Legal and General Manage Your Account website. And also if members are after any more information, we have a website that contains leaflets and fact sheets and plenty of other information. And of course we have the administration helpline where members can obviously phone up if any queries that isn't covered on the information that we've already provided.
Good, thanks Haydn. Well, that's all we have time for. Thank you to Mary and to Haydn for participating in this video. And thank you for watching. I hope you found it useful. And as always, if you have any questions or comments, we're very keen to hear from you. Goodbye.